React's most asked interview question. Can web browsers read JSX directly in React? The answer is no. Web browsers cannot read JSX directly. This is because they are built to only read regular JS objects, and JSX is not a regular JavaScript object. For a web browser to read a JSX file, we need to transform JSX file into a JavaScript object using JSX transformers like Babel, and then pass it to the browser. Number 2. What is React fragments? Answer. When we are trying to render more than one root element, we have to put the entire content inside the div tag, which is not loved by many developers. For example, in this code, when we are trying to render more than one root element, we have to put the entire content inside the div tag, which is not loved by many developers. So in React 16.2 version, fragments were introduced, and we use them instead of the extraneous div tag. Number 3. What is the difference between functional components and class components? Answer. A functional component is just a plain JavaScript pure function that accepts props as an argument and returns a React element. A class component requires you to extend from React.component and create a render function that returns a React element. There is no render method used in functional components. It must have the render method returning JSX, also known as stateless components, as they simply accept data and display them in some form. They are mainly responsible for rendering UI, also known as stateful components because they implement logic and state. Hooks can be easily used in functional components to make them stateful. It requires different syntax inside a class component to implement hooks. Conclusion. Functional components are simpler and faster. On the other hand, class components are more feature-rich and reusable. React's most asked interview question. Number 4. What is pure component in React? Answer. Imagine you have a bakery that sells cakes. Each cake is a React component. When a customer requests a cake, the bakery checks if it already has the same cake in the display case. If it does, the bakery hands over that cake to the customer without making a new one. This is similar to the way a pure component works in React. When a pure component receives new props or state, it checks if the new values are the same as the previous ones. If they are, the component doesn't re-render, just like the bakery doesn't make a new cake. But if the new values are different, the component re-renders, just like the bakery makes a new cake. React's most asked interview question. Number 5. What are the rules of hooks in React? Answer. There are 3 rules for hooks. Number 1. Only use hooks at the top level. This means don't use hooks inside loops, conditions, or nested functions. They should always be called at the top level of your functional components. Number 2. Only call hooks from React functions. Hooks should only be called from React functional components or custom hooks. Don't call them from regular JavaScript functions. Number 3. Hooks cannot be conditional. Hooks should always be called unconditionally at the top level of your component. Don't call them inside conditions, because React relies on the order of hooks to properly manage state. React's most asked interview question. Number 6. What is prop drilling in React, and how to avoid it? Answer. Prop drilling is a fundamental concept in React that involves when a parent component passes data down to its children, and then those children pass the same data down to their own children. This process called prop drilling. Initially, prop drilling may seem convenient, but as the application scales up, it becomes difficult to manage the state internally, and code maintenance becomes complex. There are many ways to avoid prop drilling, such as Context API using Redux.